Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. Today we're discussing the Bvlgari by Gerald Genta Octo Bi-Retrograde jump hour in stainless steel and ceramic. You can see and purchase this unique jump hour Bi-Retrograde on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this jump hour Bi-Retrograde, with additional accessories included in the sale, high resolution images for your desktop, and of course complete pricing details for this Bvlgari. Now on my wrist, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference, you have a watch that really benefits from a little bit of a history review. There's a saying, and I'll paraphrase, but history is the long, steep slope leading up to me, and nothing could be more true of the watch you see here. Gerald Genta, legendary watch and jewelry designer, first started toying with this basic case shape in the late 60s and early 70s in the brand of his own name. His eponymous brand, Gerald Genta, established in 1969, created the basic design language you see here, and then during the 80s and 90s, that brand started working with jump hours and retrogrades. In 1996, he sold a controlling interest in the company, which by then had merged with Daniel Roth and Le Sentier, to the Hourglass Group, a significant vendor in East Asia. And in 2000, that interest was sold to Bvlgari, which in turn, in 2011, was sold to Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, or LVMH, owners of Hublot, Zenith, today Bvlgari, and of course Tag Heuer. But in between, there was a sort of, I would say, merger of the Genta, Bvlgari, and Roth watch lines, so that Bvlgari pretty much subsumed the two small manufacturers. By 2010, the last hurrah for both this watch that you see here debuted at Baselworld. Clearly a Bvlgari, but subtly signed Gerald Genta, one last tribute to the great man, and by 2012 even that signature reference was gone. So the watch you're seeing here is a Bvlgari and it's a Gerald Genta. It's built in the famed factory in Le Sentier that also handles the repeaters and the tourbillon, and it's built to suit 43 millimeters across the broad of the case from what would conventionally be 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, not inclusive of the crown. The watch is quite slim, all things considered, with the complication module and automatic winding. Nevertheless, this timepiece is only about 12.5 millimeters thick with a generously sloped conical ceramic bezel, and it is ceramic. It's not a DLC, it's not a PVD. The watch easily slides underneath a dress cuff. Now, it has an interesting case shape that nevertheless doesn't really impede a sleeve of any kind. The watch is quite narrow lug to lug. 48.5 might be shorter across the wrist than you expect, given the sheer visual mass of the watch. It's broad, but it's flat. And here's the thing, the strap is so substantial and has such a strong character in terms of aesthetics that you just knew it had to have some sort of impact on the fit of the watch, and in fact it does. The strap feels like it could stop a bullet. It's natural vulcanized rubber. It beautifully blends with the lugs of the watch. The look is integrated, almost like a rubber and steel bracelet, but here's the thing, it does flare a little bit. So you have to think of this one as being approximately 60 millimeters lug to lug. It will tend to flare out beyond the edge of your wrist if your wrist is much smaller than 15 centimeters in circumference, but believe me, if you like the look, if you can pull it off, what a watch. The strap is fantastic, like everything else on the watch. It's angular, it's styled, it's textured, it's interesting to look at. And on the bottom, again, a small tribute to the great man, the interlocking GG of the Gerald Genta manufacturer, not yet completely absorbed into the Borg collective of Bvlgari. Not quite yet, not at this point in history. Now, the watch features innumerable facets on its satin-finished steel case, so while big, it doesn't have that glaring, polished gleam that some don't quite love. It does have some polished highlights, but they don't dominate. They accent like jewelry, appropriate to Gerald Genta's reputation. Now, of course, the complication, the jump hour Bi-Retrograde, a jump hour and a retrograde for the minutes and the date, comes from a Gerald Genta built module. That's all in-house, and it's beautiful. The dial itself has a sort of techno-industrial chic that nicely complements the white metal. You have a combination of white metal and black accents, which wears very well, and you have that little flash with the caliber in red at 6 o'clock, or what would conventionally be 6 o'clock. It's a handsome watch that just gives you a lot of facets, details, and nuances to absorb. Everything from the texture of the strap to the cut of the dial, and the dial is beautiful with lacquered details. Handsome it is, it's also complicated. So let's quickly review how the watch works. Now, it's a bi-retrograde. Retrogrades and jump hours are something Gerald Genta began working with in the 80s and heavily patented during the 90s and the early to mid-2000s before it was absorbed. Now, you can see the watch has a retrograde minute scale, and that's fairly easy to explain. You can see it jumps back as the hour itself jumps. There's also a retrograding date scale, and yes, the watch has a quickset function. Retaining the quickset of the underlying Girard-Perregaux caliber, you can adjust the crown in an intermediate position and advance the date if you want to see the retrograde just for fun to demonstrate it, or quite simply you need to correct the watch. Now, there's also a pusher corrector on the flank, and that has an interesting feature. It's part of a patented system that allows you to adjust the hour while retaining the minutes. So for instance, if I were to pull the crown out to extremity, and in case you're wondering, yes, although it doesn't have a seconds hand, that does hack the balance. The Girard-Perregaux hacking lever is retained. So you can see now if I were to actuate the pusher adjuster, I would jump the hour, but when the retrograde hand returned, it would return to precisely this minute, retaining the time but allowing me to step the watch in hour increments. Now on the case back, you can see the fascinating finish that the Gerald Genta Daniel Roth manufacturer Bvlgari in Lasantier applied to the movement. It's known as potter's gold or old gold. Now it's still plated brass, but it has a gorgeous shine to it, an incredibly rich sort of amber honey glow with a very tight and even perlage across everything. Now underneath that custom finish, you get a beautiful movement that's a unidirectional winder, 4 Hz modern beat rate. It's basically a Girard-Perregaux 3300, so a true high horology movement forming the base for a true high horology complication. And the watch enjoys 100-meter water resistance, which is an exceptional refinement in a timepiece that, by all intents, considering its origin, should be a high horology piece that remains high and dry. Nevertheless, this one's ready for action, and with 2 retrogrades and a jump hour, what action? A handsome watch and a bit of an historical document. There's a real link to Gerald Genta's legacy here, both mechanically and aesthetically. So again, the Borg Collective awaits, but back in 2010, for one last hurrah, this is what Gerald Genta and Bvlgari had wrought. You can see and you can purchase it on our website.